Hull Kingston Rovers fight as one for every goal and try. Since '85 we've stood our ground, though trophies passed us by. From Craven Park to Wembley Way, with East Hull grip we fight. Now we rise, our heads held high, proudly wearing the red and white.
The Robin Pod is powered by Budget Tyres Auto Centre. Make them your first and only choice for a vast array of vehicle services. They are reputable East Hull-based car specialists and dedicated to providing quality services at reasonable prices. And don't forget, they are trusted by the players, club officials and supporters of Hull Kingston Rovers. Find them at 146 Leeds Road and ask them about the exclusive discount they offer Hull KR Rovers Forever members. Welcome back to the Robin Pod, your weekly dose of all things Hull Kingston Rovers. And after a 3-week break, we are back. And what a few weeks it's been for the Robins. Since we last spoke, Rovers have beaten the reigning Super League champions, the Wigan Warriors, in what was a massive statement win. They have stumbled against the Leeds Rhinos, who are now hot on the heels of Wigan for that second place spot. And then, of course, Hull KR produced an absorbing encounter under the Sewell Group Craven Park floodlights with victory over St Helens. Now all eyes turn to Sunday and the home derby against bitter rivals Hull FC, with the tantalising prospect of being crowned league leaders if St Helens see off Wigan and KR get the job done. The stakes couldn't be higher. We're also diving into some huge off-field news, with head coach 𝗀𝗂𝗋𝗄𝗏 reportedly turning down an approach from NRL side Newcastle Knights, which hopefully reaffirms his commitment to the red and whites. We'll bring you all the latest club updates too, including the announcement that Jez Litton has signed a 4-year contract extension. And as always, we've got plenty more in store, which includes Steve Till joining us for Robins Revisited, and we'll be answering all your questions in our popular segment, Question Time. So sit back, tune in, and let's get into it. The Robin Pod is back, Bazza. How are you doing, my friend?
Yeah, very good, mate. Thanks for having us back on the show, Johno.
No, it's an absolute pleasure, Bazza, and it has been a crazy few weeks, hasn't it, for the Robins? Let's start with that victory over Wigan. That was the acid test for many people, wasn't it? To people who may be questioning the Robins' credentials in terms of the league leaders and possibly grand final victories. Getting that win against Wigan was so important, not just for the league table, but I think psychologically as well.
Yeah, it was massive, mate. Again, if we'd have got beat that day, I didn't see it as the end of the world for us, but it was more bigger for us on a psychological point of view than anything else, that we can go to the brick and beat a Wigan Warriors. We've heard all the excuses, you know, it wouldn't have happened if Bev and French weren't playing, but at the end of the day, you can only play what's in front of you. We had personnel missing for that game, and we did an unbelievable job, mate. We did a professional job on him. We kept Terry Smith quiet throughout that game. He lost his cool a few times. It was the Robins that we know, and I feel like coming towards the end of the season, I feel like our tactics are changing slightly, where we really are concentrating on our defence and we really are backing our defence. We are doing the fancy stuff that we saw at the beginning of the year. And it's proving dividends right now, mate. To go to Wigan, do a job on them, over the moon with it. It's a statement win, especially if we do come up against them at Old Trafford.
Yeah, and I think that will play a huge part in the back of the Rovers players' minds, knowing that they have got that victory. And of course, you know, there was a lot of significance placed on winning that game, not least in the chase for that league leaders shield, because we knew that 2 points against Wigan would put us in a really good position come the end of the season. Unfortunately, we then followed that up, that victory over Wigan, with a defeat to Leeds. I mean, where did that come from? Because it wasn't just, it wasn't just Leeds winning. It was the manner of performance and the manner that Leeds were able to dispatch us as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in that Leeds game, as an honest OKR fan, I thought we got battered in every department. Leeds was more enthusiastic than us. The defence was tougher than ours. We maybe walked into it thinking we've got the better pack. There was a couple of controversial moments, like losing Sue on the 4th minute. You know, he's one of the leaders in the group, and it's a massive loss. Overall, for the Leeds result, mate, no complaints from me. It gives us a good opportunity to reset and go again, which we proved the following week. But going back to the Leeds game, yeah, there was class. There was absolutely outstanding, and I think we'd have learnt a lot from it. I think it's done us more good than harm going forward. But going to Leeds, mate, they're outstanding. Either peaking before the playoffs. You look back at the game, they was throwing the ball about so much. The amount of offloads was incredible, and everything stuck for them. Now, on another night, if them offloads don't stick, that game could be a completely different game. But when you got the likes of Lachlan Miller in the form of his life, he's very hard to live with, and we found that out the hard way. It was a long old night, but great support from the fans at Headingley that night. Again, we'll learn a lot from it. We won't dwell on it, and we'll move on.
Yeah, and the support from the Robins faithful has been magnificent this season. The Wigan game, I think, 3,500 there, 2,000 at Leeds. You know, magnificent support. Leeds seem to be the only side, Bazza, that have got a game plan, got a way of beating the Robins. You know, even the victory over them at Headingley earlier on in the season, for 60 minutes, 65 minutes, Leeds were pretty much the better side. It was a late rally from the Robins, and of course Mikey Lewis grabbing the game by the scruff of the neck that saw the Robins come through. I suppose when we look at the playoffs, when we look at potential opponents in the semi-finals, final, you know, is there any worry that if we come up against that Leeds side that we need to panic, or do you think that Willie Peters will find a way to get past them on the big stage?
Well, I trust that Willie would find a way past it to get past them on the big stage. I think he'd have learnt a lot from the last 2 defeats, but I think every team who's going to make that playoff can beat anybody on the day. There's no walkover fixture in that 6. Every team's dangerous in their own rights. I mean, when you talk about the likes of Saints, Lee, I mean, even Wakefield, they can do a job on anyone. Arguably, Leeds are the informed side of the comp at the moment, especially with the brand of rugby they're playing. But I certainly can't see Leeds doing another job like that on us if we do meet them in the playoffs, and that is a big if. If we meet them at Old Trafford, I don't think they'll be out in it. Have we got what it takes to beat them? Absolutely. We'll have learnt a lot from the last 2 defeats by, well, all 3 games of the style of play. Yeah, I don't think they are a threat. They are a real threat. Is it a year too soon for them to get to Old Trafford? We don't know. They've definitely got the ingredients there to make it, and they'll trouble any team. They'll trouble Wigan. I mean, their last game of the year is at Wigan, and I don't think Wigan will be fancying that coming up against the Leeds. So, for me, mate, every team in that top 6, anybody can beat anybody. It could come down to an injury, a dodgy decision from the referee, but that's the beauty this year. It's so competitive. No games really are given.
Yeah, and I do think you know, in a season of many highs, you know, that defeat to Leeds was just maybe just that little bit of a wake up call heading into the playoffs, the last few games of the season. You know, just to say, look, we have been good, but if you take your foot off the gas, if you take your eye off the ball, teams are there to take you, and I think that's ultimately what happened against Leeds. And like you said, Sewell going off had a huge impact because not only that, the game plan completely changes. You know, and there's these mitigating circumstances. But like you said, when Leeds threw the ball around, everything stuck. Every offload, every pass, every idea came off. You know, chances are you can't repeat that. So I'm sure it's a game that Willie will learn a lot from. He's probably learned a lot from his players. The players have probably learned a lot about, you know, how they approach the game when they come up against a side like Leeds. But I tell you what, righted the wrongs against St Helens, didn't they, on Friday night? Because that was another absorbing, brutal encounter, and not least forgetting the fact that we started the game with our front three missing. So 𝗵𝗂𝗯, Jeremiah Hargreaves and Sauso Sue all out. It would have been probably, if all fully fit, starting. So the fact that we was able to counter a St Helens pack, which had been steamrolling sides over the last few weeks, I thought was absolutely fantastic. And it was a game, I think, a bit like the Wigan game, where we saw what Rovers really are about grinding out that win, making sure that the game's as difficult as possible for the opposition, stopping their middlemen. And then ultimately, again, like we saw in the Challenge Cup final, a bit of magic from Mikey Lewis, pass out to 𝗬𝗲𝗁, goes in. And this Robin side backs themselves to do that. They just stay in the game, ready for that one strike moment. And when they get it, they take it. And even when St Helens scored late on, they want that nervousness. I don't think that Saints would come back and score again.
No, and that game against St Helens for me was an absolute masterclass of defence from both sides. It was a game for the purist. It was unbelievable, battering 10 bells out of each other, for 80 minutes. Really, really tough, solid defence. And again, coming off the back of that bad defeat against Leeds, we didn't know what to expect from KR, especially losing the players we have. But again, there was no nerves about it. St Helens are the second best defence in the comp, so we knew it was going to be a low-scoring game if we just get back to our own way and how we play, and we did that, and we strangled them. I think Mikey's come under some criticism lately, which has riled me a little bit, to say that he goes missing in big games. Well, for me, last weekend was a huge game. I think it was bigger than what people realised in terms of us chasing for that league leader shield and St Helens chasing for that second spot. And the key moment in that game for me was that 40-20 from Mikey Lewis. It really, because Saints was getting a little bit of a roll on at that point, and I feel like they were starting to win the arm wrestle slightly, and Mikey just got us out of trouble, just like he did at Wembley. And again, he had his hands in that last pass to 𝗬𝗲𝗁 to get him over. I don't think in that game we had a few disallowed tries, and on another day, Willie Peters will be looking back at them, ice them moments, because they're going to be few and far between, especially in these games. But it had that playoff intensity, and I feel comfortable and confident now we can go up against anybody, and we'll give them a good game in the playoffs if we get to Old Trafford. And I think that's going to be the brand of rugby we're going to be playing from here on in. Really tough, tight, defence minded, and we might not have a great deal of attacking options, but we just need to back our defence every time, and that's what we did against St Helens. And again, over the course of the 80 minutes, we overcome them. We knackered them out. There was a couple of moments in that game. I mean, at one point, we was down to 11 men when Mikey went off for a couple of minutes while Martin was in the bin. And 11 against 13, we still stood up and worked hard for the man next to him. So, yeah, it's fantastic at the minute. And, yeah, I feel comfortable with getting back to winning ways. We had that blip against Leeds, but I think Hull KR quietened down a lot of the doubters. Can we back ourselves, and are we going to keep our nerve? And I think that game against St Helens, I think that proved that 100%.
Yeah, and you mentioned Mikey Lewis there. He did come up with that magic, and big players come up with big moments. And there's no doubt that 40-20 definitely turned the tide. But it wasn't just that, was it? It was a follow-up, that the pass to 𝗬𝗲𝗁 that created the try for us. And that is what we've got in our side. We've got players, we can keep it tight, we can keep it compact. We can work hard in defence, we can slow the opposition down, we can make them play a game that they don't want to play. But we've also then got the players who can make that strike, who can come up with that magic moment, who can put our noses in front. Don't forget as well the importance of Rhys Martin's kicking, just to keep the scoreboard ticking over. And you could sense the game plan was about just staying in the game, just adding some points onto the scoreboard, because they knew a chance would come eventually, just like the Challenge Cup final. These players back themselves to come up with a moment at some point in the game. And you know, as a supporter, you have that confidence as well that they will. You know, yeah, don't get me wrong, you get nervous and you're worried and you think, where are the points going to come from at times? You're worried that maybe the opposition, if they nick a try, you know, the game suddenly swings. But I do think we have that confidence in the side, and it's not an accident. This game plan has been formulated over the last few years now, and this is at a point where Willie Peters' game plan is really starting to bear fruits and come to fruition. A little bit like the Wigan game, you know, we knew just stick at it. It took a late Wigan try to maybe cause a little bit of panic, but once Rovers got the noses in front, they just back themselves every time, and it's the work ethic, it's the commitment to work for the teammates, it's they don't feel sorry for themselves, you know, they get up and they want to do something about it, and that's why this Rovers side is such a joy to watch. And I think, you know, we've seen comparisons with the teams in the 80s and where this team stands. Well, this is without doubt the best Hull Kingston Rovers side I've ever seen. You know, and we've seen the Challenge Cup final trophy being lifted, and I'm supremely confident that this side is going to bring us more silverware come the end of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the most important thing, if you haven't noticed, we've remained very grounded. From the coach, the players, they've not got ahead of themselves, and I don't think this is our dynasty. You know, this is our little golden generation. And I do back them to go and do the League Leaders Shield, and I do back them to get to Old Trafford. Will we win it? Again, we don't know. Anything can happen because there's so many good teams in there at the moment, but we've come such a long way in the years I've supported them, and I'd like to think that this is the bar now. This is the bar set, and we can keep repeating this year on year. I just hope we don't fall into a 1 year wonder, which I don't believe we will. We ain't got that mentality about us. The players, they're built for the future, and even the youth they're bringing in, you can see a bright future for Hull Kingston Rovers, and we are going to go places. But for me, I'm just not looking too far ahead. I'm not looking behind, and I'm not looking too far ahead. I'm just doing it 1 week at a time, and I'll feel comfortable once we've got that League Leaders Shield in our hands. And you know,
I tell you what, Bazzy, you're sounding like Willie Peters. Then 1 game at a time, never look too far ahead. You know, that is the mantra, isn't it? The next game is the most important.
Yeah, and that's how I've been all year, mate. When I've had a few pelters from people going, the League Leaders Shield's yours, and I'm like, it's not. Anything can happen, you know. I've still got the old Rovers mentality. We could implode at any point. So once it's done, it's done. I'll start to celebrate and enjoy it. But again, it's 1 week at a time.
Yeah, and I mean, in that St Helens game, I mean, we're going to talk about contract news a little bit later on, but two players who really did help lay a platform for the victory was Dean Hadley and Jez Litton. You know, their work through the middle was absolutely outstanding. You know, Paul Sculthorpe, he's touting Jez Litton for that starting berth, that starting hooker spot for England in the Ashes. And it's that performance, that type of performance against St Helens that's really putting him forward now, because it's not just the offensive work, it's the defensive work that he's coming up with now. He's bulked up, he's a strong player, he's got energy to burn, and he's measured with how he defends, you know, and he's an absolute asset to the side, just as Dean Hadley is, and that came to the fore against St Helens. Yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, going back to the Wigan game, I thought I'd seen the shot of the year, what Peterico put on Jai Field, and really levered him one. But then when I saw what Jez Litton did to Daz Clark, and I mean, Daz Clark's no slouch, is he? He's no pushover. And for him to flatten a player like Daz Clark, and not only that, force the error, Jez's defence, again, in 25 minutes, it's come on leaps and bounds. And Willie challenged him. And I think the challenges Willie set him is past every single one of them. between him and Dean Hadley, they've got absolutely zero respect for the bodies, because they're just throwing themselves in front of absolutely anything, whether it's the biggest guy on the field or the littlest guy on the field. They don't shy away from any tackles. But the thing is, with Jez, you'll see him defend for 60, 65 minutes, beating players up, but then he still manages to find the energy in the closing stages of a game to make an half break and run 20 metres. Like, you got to wonder where he's got that energy from, because the lad just never stops. And I don't think they've got a very similar mentality between Dean Hadley and Ches Litton, especially with a work ethic. They're a real asset for us. And yeah, it's phenomenal that we've tied them down for a few years, because again, that's our future, that's our bread and butter. And it sort of gets rid of interest from Australia. Should Jez be in England squad? Without a doubt. I think we'd see a better version of Ches Litton against Australia if he was starting off the bench. And that's not to say he's a poor player. I just think Jes coming off the bench for a Daz Clark or a Brad O'Neill at a tiring Australian defence, I think he'd be in his element. And I think Sean Wayne can't look past Jes Litton. He really cannot look past him. If he does, then I honestly do not know what Jes has to do to get in that England side. But saying that, same with Dean Hadley. To not even be mentioned, it's for me, it's criminal. It's criminal.
And Dean Hadley, he's a bit like Jes as well. Their careers under Willie Peters has gone to the next level, and don't get me wrong, it's a hell of a lot of hard work from the players who to get them where they are. But I think Willie Peters and the coaching staff have had a big hand in helping them players achieve what they're achieving so far. So it's great credit to them. We're going to see the Ashes squad very soon and see who starts. Ches Litton's in the frame. I mean, then we start talking about Mikey Lewis, where he might play for England. If he doesn't start, they reckon he might come off the bench. Well, if he comes off the bench, previously he's gone into the hooker role for Sean Wayne's England side. So it's all to come, isn't it? Ironically, Bazza, as we talk about Dean Hadley and Ches Litton, we come up against the side that cast them aside on Sunday, and how much they'd love to have two players of that ilk in their side right now. But we'll talk about the derby very soon. St Helens game, Rhys Martin sin-binned. He's then copped a grade D charge, which has resulted in a 2-game suspension. We also saw another player go sin-binned as well, but they only received a 1-game ban. What did you make of Rhys Martin's suspension? And he's a player that we are going to miss in terms of kicking over the next couple of games.
Man, I'll be honest with you, I'm absolutely filthy over it. Excuse me, Morgan Knowles was already falling. The tackle was like half completed. It was going down. Rhys Martin just coming over the top, like any player does. It's happened all year, and it's just unfortunate that he's caught him. There was no intent there. You could argue that Morgan filled his HIA from his head bouncing off the deck. To get a 2-game ban, I honestly cannot work it out how they work out the points, because George Delaney, who was the other guy, Johno, all got 10 minutes, and that was a clear shoulder to the head with intent. And that's
I thought
the
that
difference.
Was the Martin one. I thought
100%. What's infuriated me is George Delaney did that against Lachlan Walmsley against Wakefield, this exact same sort of challenge where he's laid him out with his shoulder. So for Rhys Martin, always an honest player, he's not a dirty player, to cop 15 points and get a 2-game ban on a grade D. It's criminal. Now, I'm not just saying that because I've got my Rovers blinkers on, but like you take George Delaney, who's done the same challenge twice against Wakefield and against KR, with his shoulder, direct force to the head, to get a yellow card and pick up no suspensions. I believe Delaney has picked up a ban only because of accumulation of points. But then you go back to a Tyrone mate who gets 2 match ban for it and a referee's feelings. I can't work it out. Like I was quite a bit of a big fan of the grading system at the beginning of the year, how they worked out on the disciplinary panel. But I think the second half of the year, there's just no consistency about it at all. And to get 15 points in a 2-game ban, it's wrong when it definitely was not the worst challenge of the night. I'm not saying 2 wrongs make a right. I thought a yellow was sufficient, potentially a couple of points, but to go straight to a grade D, and you see George Delaney walk away with, I think it was a grade B. And again, it wasn't even the worst challenge of the weekend. You got Milne for Huddersfield, what was a shocker. You got Tyler Dupree against Catalan, which again was a shocker. And Tyler Dupree didn't even pick up a ban. So where they can get Reece Martin on a grade D and a 2-game ban, I honestly can't work it out. I've seen nothing this week whether Hull KR have appealed it. I really hope they do, to be honest with you. Whether they have or not, I'm not sure. Willie Peters.
I'll be honest, I'd be surprised. I'd be surprised if they did, just because the amount of cover, or the players they've got who can fill in that position. What frustrates me is that what was taken into account with the 2-game ban was the fact that Knowles suffered a HIA, suffered concussion. Now it's a dangerous path to go down when you're taking into account the result, the injury, what happens, because. Like you said about Delaney's, just because he don't knock the kid out, don't mean that the tackles any, in as bad. It just means that the player, for whatever reason, hasn't, copped one. So I think when you go down that path, it's really dangerous territory, and I think that is why he's probably got 2-game and not the 1-game.
Yeah, well, for me, it's still wrong. If it had got 1 game, could you understand it? Potentially, yeah, because you look at the pros and cons of both sides of the fence. Like Morgan Knowles is going to be out for a week due to HIA. It sort of levels it up. I kind of get it.
Yeah.
But again, it goes down to intent. Now, for him to cop a 2-game ban, I don't know, mate. I wish they'd come out and give us a bit of clarity over the decisions and why they've made them and why they grade a Tyler Dupree against a Reece Martin challenge, when looking at them both in real time, like a Tyler Dupree's was a lot worse, a George Delaney's was a lot worse. So you just want a bit of clarity as to why it's deemed as a grade D, just because a player's failed his HIA. Every player has a different pain threshold. Some players can take an head knock. I mean, look at Artur Morg. The head knocks he's took this year, mate, had put some of the bigger guys out for a week or two. Yeah. But Artur, it just gets up and cracks on. So everybody's different, mate, and there's no telling if the contact from Reece has caused the concussion or the fact Morgan's head bounced off the deck caused it. So for me, it's a bit of a grey area, and again, it won't even by far anywhere near the worst challenge of the weekend, and yet he got punished the most for it, and I can't work it out.
No. Steve, welcome to this week's Robin Pod. Of course, people who are familiar with the Robin Pod will know that you're going to give us a taste of games gone by. Of course, we face the Black and Whites on Sunday. Which game are you going to take us back to this week, Steve?
I'm not going back far. Just about everybody who's been following Rovers in recent seasons know this one. I'm going to go back. It was 3 years this week, September the 3rd, the match, and Rovers travelled over to the MKM Stadium, looking a bit as though we might not be able to win this game. It was a game that both teams were towards the bottom of the table. And in fact, I think it's the only time Sky haven't televised a Hull derby since Rovers got back into Super League, because it was Saturday, September the 3rd, and Sky weren't bothered with us. So there were only actually, it just shows really, there were only 16,999 in the stadium. So it wasn't a game that anybody expected anything from. But far from it, Rovers performed magnificently. Rovers under Danny Maguire at the time, he was the interim coach. Danny Maguire only fielded 3 substitutes, and those 3 substitutes were Connor Moore, Zach Fishwick, and Connor Barley. So there wasn't a wealth of experience there. And we took on a whole team that included Jake Connor, Luke Gale, Scott Taylor, Danny Houghton, Satai. So it was a useful. I know, reading back at the time, some Hull journals said, "Oh, the 14 men down." Well, looking at that, it wasn't a bad team, but Rovers, they proved the better of the two, because Rovers scored after 8 minutes with a 𝗀𝗂𝗋𝗃 try, but that was blotted out by Luke Gale in the 8th minute. Sorry, 𝗀𝗂𝗋𝗃 in the 8th minute, Luke Gale in the 11th minute. But that was the last time the Black and Whites troubled the scoreboard operator, because Ryan Hull crossed in the 18th minute. And then I'm trying to think, it was Ron Milnes in the Ron Milnes crossed soon after that. And then none other than 𝗪𝗪𝗏𝗂𝗃. How about that? 𝗪𝗪𝗏𝗃 looking fitter than he'd ever looked in a Rovers shirt. He managed to cross over. It was his last game for Rovers. It's the fittest we ever got him. And a friend of mine mentioned the other day that it was his last game and he went to Castleford. And when he went for pre-season training at Castleford, he looked as though he'd been back on the training at McDonald's again, because he didn't look half as fit. But he crossed the whitewash, and with Ron Milnes kicking the goals, Rovers had a 24-4 lead at half-time, which increased after 10 minutes into the second half, when Kane Lynette put Ethan Ryan through with one of his customary passes, and Ryan touched down again, converted, and then it became more of an attritional fight. Hull having to, conquer the Rovers' attacks, but not showing anything themselves in attack. So it wasn't until the dying minutes that Rovers finished the match off with hooker on the day, Elliot Minchella scoring. So that ended up with a 24-4 victory. Rovers leapt above Hull in the league table. We finished 8th, they finished 9th. And what a 16. What a team of 16 to take on the mighty Black and Whites. Let's hope we have another success on Sunday.
Yeah, and Steve, that game, I mean, it's one that'll be fresh, very much so in people's minds. As much as it was great to see Rovers score, it was the utter capitulation of that lot that made the victory all that bit sweeter as well.
Yeah, it was a first half. Nobody could have imagined a first half that would finish with Rovers 20 points up. When you looked at the team sheets, I mean, earlier in the season, Rovers had played Hull, and we'd had people like 𝗀𝗂𝗋𝗃 at full back, and Minchella had played his normal position. Jez Litton had played. We'd beaten them at Craven Park, but then, funnily enough, we went to the Magic weekend and they beat us something like 34-28. But a lack of a goal kicker cost us that game. And so we needed a bit of revenge anyway, but we certainly got it on the last game of the season. And it put smiles on the Rovers supporters and players for the close season until season 2023.
Huge thanks to Steve Till there for this week's Robins Revisited. Bazza, before we talk about the derby, there's huge news. We saw earlier on Dean Hadley being it announced that he signed a 1-year contract extension. And of course, we've just received the news that Jez Litton has been tied down for 4 more years. He's going to be at the Robins till at least 2029. which is an amazing news. What's your reaction to the deal?
Mate, absolutely overjoyed. Yeah, 1 year for Dino is about right, due to him getting to the twilight years of his career. Even if Dino decides to retire after that, I think I could see Dino staying with the club in some sort of capacity. He's a true legend at Hull KR. As for Jez, that's incredible. Like that almost feels like a brand new signing. It's that good. And more importantly, it takes him to his testimonial year, which I reckon will be quite special in 29. 10 years with a club. It's just brilliant going forward. And it's not only what he brings on the pitch, it's what he brings off the pitch. I mean, if you've watched the interview when he announced his contract extension, the likes of Bill Leyland, they're going to benefit so much having Jez Litton. He's just grown as a person, as a player, as a man, and as a true leader for our club. It's what we need, and it just shows how far we've come, because you'd have the likes of a Leeds Rhinos or a St Helens sniffing around at Jez Litton. Now, 10 years ago, we'd have lost our little superstar like we did with Josh Hodgson, but the club at the moment is in that much of a good place and it's that attractive. Players want to stay; they don't want to leave. So, it's great news. It's great news going forward for us.
Yeah, and if reports are to be believed, there was rumours that there was a few Super League sides, namely Leeds Rhinos, who were interested in signing Jez Litton going forward. So it's great that we've been able to tie him down. And now it's clear, isn't it, that he is going to be the number one hooker, because we've seen over the past few seasons him playing sort of second fiddle to 𝗪𝗂𝗧𝗏. Even this season, 𝗪𝗂𝗪𝗏𝗀𝗏 was a starting hooker. Do you think Mickey's injuries have sort of helped Jez Litton this season, in that he's probably got more game time than he would have done if 𝗪𝗂𝗪𝗏𝗏𝗀 had stayed fit, for example?
I don't know. It's hard to say if it had helped him, because I think Jez always knew his role this year. You know, it was always the number 9, but Mickey Mac was always going to be playing a 20-minute stint, so Jez would be doing an hour. But Jez, again, it's helped him with his leadership, because he really has had to take charge at times, like in the Challenge Cup when he had to drop into the halves and steer the team around. I think it's helped him with his confidence, because towards the back end of last year, he dropped off a little bit of form. I'm not saying he was a bad player; he just dropped off from his standards. Mate, I still don't think we've seen the best of him. I think there's more to come from him. So I think every game of the year, mate, it's helping him, and he's standing up as a true leader in the fronts.
Yeah, and I think what he's added to his game is the consistency now. You know, there was some times, maybe even at the start of the season, last season, where it could be a little bit erratic, the form, but now, you know, he's an 8 out of 10 player every single week. And I mentioned about 𝗪𝗂𝗪𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗏𝗏𝗀 injury. I think another player who's benefited from that is Bill Leyland, because now he's having a bit more game time. He's starting to dip him in for a bit longer, and it looks like from 2026, them two will be the hooker partnership. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that develops. But I'm really ready for Jez Litton to take on that starting hooker role. We have pretty much got an 80-minute hooker there as well, don't forget. A player who can go play the big minutes, which, you know, it might be a changing game plan. We might actually see next season Jez Litton doing these really long minutes, and then that'll help us out in another interchange. You know, it adds another forward that we can put on. So it's going to be interesting to see how it pans out. And I think I'm just delighted that he's going to be at the club for so long, because like you said, it's his leadership as well, and how happy he looks being at the club, being amongst the supporters, being amongst his teammates. It's just a great fit. And he's another player who's been tied down on a long-term contract now. It wasn't that long ago that Mikey Lewis signed a 5-year deal. That takes him to the end of 2028. We've also seen 𝗀𝗽𝗻𝗀𝗏𝗀𝗀 and James Batchelor tied down to 2029. And of course, this season, Elliot Minchella, he signed a 3-year deal. So that takes him to 2029. And you can see they're the players that the side's been built around. They're at a good age. Them players who I've just named there are coming in to their peak careers in terms of age. So it's exciting for us as supporters to know that we've got them. And it also looks like they don't want to be anywhere else. You know, as much as it's good for us that we've got them tied down, it looks good for the players because they don't want to leave this club. And it shows the great work that 𝗁𝗏𝗏𝗧, all the backroom staff, the off-field staff have done to make our club such a warm, welcoming and enjoyable place to come and work, really, to come and do your job.
Yeah, it is. And again, going back to when you was on about Jez then, I don't know if you noticed, but I think it did get overlooked a little bit. But in that Wigan game where fatigue will kick in, we went through that game and we didn't use Bill Leyland. Now, I don't know if Willie trusts Bill Leyland in the big games just yet. He's certainly going to have to step up next year. But to get these players tied down, I think 𝗁𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗧 has a lot more respect for him because of the mindset, the work ethic, the willingness to graft hard for each other. And that is the sort of personnel we have around our club. And you can see how much people has changed over the last 2 to 3 years. And again, like 𝗀𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗀 he's gone under the radar a bit this year. But again, his work ethic, his willingness to go into second row when he's an out-and-out prop, he's willing to do what he can for the team. And I think a lot of it is down to attitude. And these boys have got the right attitude and the right work ethic. And it's paying off for them now because they're getting long-term deals where the future is secure.
Yeah, and it allows the club to plan as well, doesn't it? And most importantly, these are, you know, with the exception of Whitbread, English players. You know, so it comes into the salary cap, and you know, so these are massive deals. They're so important for the Robins, and these are, you know, you can see Lewis, Minchella, Litton. You know, that is the axis at which this team is operating under. So it's great to see that these are going to be here for much longer. End of next season, Bazza, 2026, there is going to be some movement, I expect, because when you look at some of the players who are out of contract next season, which means that they can start negotiations with the Robins. You know, it's a big old list of players. You know, players coming to the end of their contract in 2026 include 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, Oliver Gildart, Sauso Su, Kalepi Tanganoa, Joe Burgess, Reece Martin, Jack Brown, Eric Dorrow, Bill Leyland, and then you look at some of the reserve grade players, Zach Fishwick, Leo Tennyson, Phoenix Loai-Tohai, Lee Kershaw, and Leon Ruin. There is a number of first team players there that have got question marks probably hanging over them, Bazza, whether they're in the side for 2027 or whether they're not. But it's this time of year between sort of September and November where some of these players will start to be tied down tracks if 𝗁𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏s and the club want to keep them, because they won't want to get into November once other clubs come sniffing and sign them up. And when you look at the likes of 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, Burgess, Su, Tanganoa, you know, these are mainstays of the side at the moment, and it's hard to think of a Rover side without them in it.
No, you're right, it is. But again, a lot of them players you've named there, they're coming towards the back end of the career. They might not want to go around again. But one thing I do trust is from that interview, was it last year with Paul Lakin? The club's probably already planning for 2027. They've already got a list of names, candidates. I wouldn't be surprised if they are talking to one or two personnel to get them over to the club in 2027. So again, you look at the likes of them huge names who've been absolutely amazing for us, and you dread to think what we'll be like without them. But it wasn't that long ago where we couldn't see a side without an Ethan Ryan and players like that, you know, who we didn't want to let go. Sean Kenny Dowell or Ryan Hall. But over time, there've been upgrades, and that's no disrespect on them players. So I think come 2027, a lot of these players will potentially retire, move on. They'll still go down in Rovers history as absolute legends because of what they've done for us. But the future's bright, and again, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of deals are currently getting sorted for 27. But if you look at recruitment for next year, we've gone in the opposite direction of signing a lot of young kids, more notably like 𝗕𝘂𝗱𝗴𝗏. So we are planning well ahead, and we are bringing the age down. So I'd be sad to see a lot of these guys go, because they've been invaluable for us. But I think one thing I've learned about Hull KR, what's a bit different to other clubs, we don't rely on sentiment. You know, we don't give a player on sentiment, whether it's in the form of his life or not. If it's time to go, it's time to go. So I've got every faith come 2027, 28 and beyond that the club's going in the right direction with the recruitment.
Baz, we've got the black and whites on Sunday. It's Derby week. It doesn't really feel like Derby week. That's probably because we've got our eyes on a much bigger prize than a victory over that lot. It's interesting. Lewis Martin has come out and said this is their biggest game of the season because, of course, they're still pushing for a playoff spot. But our eyes on a much bigger prize, and of course, if Saints are able to come up with a victory over Wigan on Friday night, Sunday's game's got such huge significance.
It has, mate, and I think what's been odd about this derby, I don't feel like there's been any build up to it, and at the limelight it has in recent years, and I don't feel that intensity about it, as daft as it sounds, and that's not me coming across in an arrogant way, like it's going to be an easy victory, but I don't know. It don't feel like Derby week. Like Derby week, you're living it, you're breathing it, you're thinking about it from waking up to going to bed. And I've not felt that this week. Whether you have or not, I'm not sure. But again, across social media, there's no real build up to it with Sky Sports and whatnot. For Lewis Martin to come out and say it's their biggest game of the year, it kind of shows you the mentality that Hull FC are at, because we've been guilty of it sometimes. Like when we wasn't, should we say, as good as we are now, we pretty much live for the derby and getting one over our nearest and dearest. But again, like you've just said, we're looking beyond that. We've got more important things to think about instead of winning a derby, and that's it. That's your cup final. That's your season done. We're looking at the bigger picture. So it's been very quiet this week in the run up to the derby. I am looking forward to it. I am still a little bit nervous, but again, that's every derby week. But I think we'll be all right. I'm not sure what you'll think. Like,
well, to be honest, mate, I think, you know what the big difference is even when we were either newly promoted to Super League or we were struggling near the bottom end, we always thought we had a chance in the derby. We was never really sort of, we are downbeat. We was always like, but I reckon we could still beat them. Whereas if you speak to Hull fans in the lead up to this game, I reckon 99.9% of them are predicting a loss. They don't even see a way of competing with the Robins. So that's why I think there's a bit of a different feel to it. And there's no doubt whatsoever. I mean, that lot got a horrendous injury record again. May I add? It seems to be a common theme, especially when you come to the back end of their season. You know, their star players, Johno, 𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪 Price, for example, they're all missing. They are going to be calling on some of their young guns to come and hopefully do a job for them. But I can't see them doing anything. I can't even see them coming close to the Robins. I just think it's a perfect storm for the Robins. And I tell you what, if St Helens, and it is a big if, and we don't want to rely on other people to help us get over the line, but if Saints do a number on Wigan, I tell you what, it's going to be an interesting atmosphere, not because it's the derby, but just because we are so desperate for the Robins to lift that league leaders shield. And what better way to do it than in the faces of our nearest and dearest? So it's got everything that it could be. Such a huge encounter, like I've already said. You look at the Robins team news, Bazza. We're expecting to see 𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗪 game too early for him. He was always penciled in for the Wakefield game, so would be very surprised to see him coming to the side. Sauso Sue, everyone's expecting him to be missing. He's going to be out for at least the next couple of weeks. Mickey McAlorum, hopefully we'll see him in the playoffs. but he's still, of course, nursing that ankle injury. And we know Reece Martin's missing with a 2-game suspension. But even with them players missing, Bazza, we've got more than able replacements to come in and do a job against that lot, haven't we? And I wonder if maybe someone like Jack Brown's been primed for this game, because we saw Eric Dorrow play against St Helens when the big call was for Brown to possibly come into the side. I wonder if this is the game that he gets the nod.
Yeah, I won't be surprised if Jack Brown does get the nod, because of the rivalry there. Obviously, he's come from there, but he's an East Hull lad. Going into this game, again, it's not won till it's actually won, but you could look at it in the past when we've beat them, mate. We thought we've been beat on paper. We should have been battered, going back to the famous 42-6 victory that we had over them in their backyard. But the fact that they've got a lot of young lads in there, especially young lads from Hull, it kind of makes them a little bit more dangerous, because they actually really do understand what the old derby is about. We've got more than enough to get past them, and I don't think 𝗀𝗲𝗄𝗏 will settle for any sort of complacency. I'm expecting us to do a proper professional job and hopefully put a bit of a score on them. But again, if you ask me now, and I'd take a 10-6 victory over them, providing we get over the line with no injuries and no suspensions. At this time of year, that's the thing that's key for me, is we get the win no matter what margin, but we get through unscathed. That's what's most important for me for Rovers at the moment. I think there's going to be some interesting battles, especially with the likes of Elliot Minchella and Brad Fash, or Brad Gash, whatever you want to call him, because they've got a bit of history together. So that's going to be a nice
these are the battles, though, Bazza. They don't need to get involved in, do they? Don't get me wrong. The derby was all about a bit of biff and a bit of a bash and getting in the faces and settling some old scores. But we don't have the players don't have a rivalry with them on the pitch, because they're competing at different levels. They're just, Minchella, Brad Fash. There's no comparison whatsoever. So in a way, this is where we're at a point now where you'd almost be disappointed if some of our players did get engaged with them, because there's such a different level to them.
No, you're right, mate. And what worries me is when we went back and did that number on Salford, we got drawn in to that nitty-gritty stuff and we let ourselves down at times. So we are guilty of that. And I just hope we don't get drawn into it again. And I was referencing Brad Fash because, he bit Elliot a few years ago. And was it last year? He grabbed his nuts. And I don't know, he was just quite dirty towards Elliot Minchella. So I'm hoping Elliot gets one back over him, but in the right way. And again, like I say, I just want to get through the game with no injuries, no suspensions, because I don't expect Hull to throw everything at us. But KR being the way we are, we'll just sit back and we'll absorb it for 20 minutes, and then we'll just go down the other end and we'll do what we have to do. I don't think they've got enough there to trouble us. They'll certainly give us a game, mate. The effort will be there, but it's skill that gets you over the line, innit? You can have all the effort in the world. Salford's been putting effort in all year and been getting pumped every week. So Hull FC this week, for me, they don't have the skill level, especially without the likes of Asiata and whatnot in the halves. And I don't even know if ค์Cust's playing in this, because he's been quite instrumental from this year.
Yeah, I hope he is playing, because I don't see any threat from whatsoever. One thing that still grates on me is we let Jayden Okunbor score 2 tries. That still grates on me.
Yeah.
He'll turn out for that for the rest of his life. But yeah, I just, like you said, ultimately, we want to come through this game unscathed, no injury, no suspensions. A victory, of course, that is imperative. If we can put points on them, that is what I expect us to do. But, it's winning the game, which is the most important part. And who knows, hopefully come 5:05, 5:10 Sunday, it could be party time in East Hull, which is going to be very interesting, isn't it? But let's see what happens Friday night, and then of course let's leave the boys to do their job. And if you go into the game, make sure you are loud and proud. We saw against St Helens the biggest crowd in since 1984, an ounce over 12,000 people packed into Sewell Group Craven Park, which is absolutely fantastic to see. And no doubt it's going to be another huge crowd. If you are going, we've got some sad news, haven't we, Baz? As some people may be aware, we lost fellow Robin earlier in the week. Ben Pearson, aged just 29 years old, sadly passed away. He leaves a family behind him. Of course, he was a Robin through and through. No doubt many people watching and listening to this will have known Ben. So our thoughts are with his friends, family, everyone who knew him, because it is absolutely crazy to lose someone at such a young age, and someone who had still so much to give and who was creating lots of happy memories for lots of people. Rover supporters, Hull FC supporters have been urged to unite on the 29th minute with a round of applause to show appreciation and our respect to Ben. So, of course, me and Baz will be joining in, and we expect everybody else around us and everyone else in the crowd at Sewell Group Craven Park to do the same, because it's tragic news, and we want to pay our respects. And it's right that, yeah, we talk about the rivalry, don't we, Baz? But let's not forget, one thing that unites us is actually the derby. Family groups, families, friendship groups, work colleagues, the derby does unite, and it's times like this when red and white, black and white needs to come together and pay our respects.
Yeah, you do it. You worded that beautifully there, mate. My ears are standing on end here. Got a bit of a lump in my throat. Absolutely bob on. You can have the banter in the ground. We don't want no trouble, no fighting. Enjoy the game, enjoy the derby, and like you've just alluded to, it's the love of rugby league why everyone's there. And we do have that rivalry, but in situations like this, not just Hull Rovers, but in the rugby league community, it's where we come together whenever something bad like this happens. So from me and my family, thoughts are with Ben and his young family and his parents, because they must be going through an absolute horrific time at the moment. A lovely tribute by 𝗀𝗂𝗃𝗃, and again, if all the fans from black and white, red and white, no matter what you're singing or grief you're giving each other in the ground, 29th minute, just put it to one side, put your beer down, and just unite and just give a minute's round of applause for this young man. 29, all life ahead of him. He's got young children, his family. It's horrific, and unfortunately, he's no longer with us due to some illness. I didn't know the lad personally, but seeing the tributes flood about, it sounds like he was an amazing man. So on the 29th minute, if everyone could just come together, applaud him, and then enjoy the rest of the game, and after the game, shake hands and go on, because that's the privilege that us fans have got on Sundays, that we get to go home to our kids, to our parents, to our family. And unfortunately, Ben's family don't have that. So I think people just need to remember that come full time on Sunday. Enjoy the game, and yeah, just try and pay a nice tribute to a nice young man who's not only a fan of KR, but he was a fan of rugby league, and that's what we all are at the end of the day.
Yeah, 100%. And don't forget, the game on Sunday kicks off at 3:05, and not 3 p.m. originally. The government are going to be texting us messages, so because of that, the game's going to kick off a little bit later, which leads us now to question time. Bazza, Danny Burton on Instagram, he asked, how long has Mikey Lewis got left on his contract, and do you think he'd sign a new long-term deal like Cs? Well, we already mentioned that Mikey Lewis is tied down to 2028 after signing a 5-year deal, so I can't imagine much movement this season or next season on that, but it'd be interesting to see what we do with Mikey going forward, because the better he gets, the more consistent he gets, the more interest he gets from other clubs.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, we always had that doubt in our mind, especially with the likes of 𝗀𝗲𝗄𝗃𝗃 being sounded out for the Newcastle job. But thankfully, that's been quashed in this last week. So with regards to Mikey, I don't think right now we should see out his contracts. Whether he goes beyond that, we don't know. His personal life looks like it's going well. So if his personal life's going well, he's happy, he's enjoying his rugby, I don't see why he'd leave. I reckon he does still have aspirations to go over to Australia, but Mikey will know when the time's right, and I believe Willie will influence Mikey in when the time will be right for him. So I've got no questions that he'll stay till 28. Beyond that, we don't know. We don't know. At the end of the year, somebody could come in and make a bumper offer, which can't be turned down. So it's always hard to say. But right now, I'm confident that we've got him till at least 28.
Yeah. Andrew North, he says, with Gildart back next week, we hope, we think, will he play with Jack Broadbent doing so well? I mean, we're all expecting Oliver Gildart to come straight back into the side, but that's going to be at the expense of someone who's playing really well, isn't it? So it's not a gimme that he will come back into the side.
For me, he doesn't walk back into that side. He's got to earn that jersey. And over this year, for me, Jack Broadbent's earned the number 4 shirt for next year. So I think the only way Ollie Gildart comes back in is one or two reasons. One, to give Jack Broadbent a week off, bit of rest, because again, that lad's done some phenomenal minutes this year, or injury. But if Jack Broadbent's fully fit and is full of energy, no bumps or bruises, I can't see Ollie Gildart displacing him at this moment in time, and that's unfortunate for Ollie. But if it's not broke, don't fix it. But Willie Peters has this knack of rotating the squad, to giving his players the rest at the right time. So I don't think we will see Ollie at some point. Whether it's going to be on a consistent basis, I don't know.
I do think as well, Baz, and I've mentioned it on the Robin pod before, Willie Peters does have his set 13. So there's no doubt that if certain players are fit, there is no question mark whether they go into the side or not. They are in the side. And it's interesting. I wonder if Ollie Gildart is one of them players that, you know, if he's fit, it doesn't matter who else is playing ahead of him, he goes into the side.
He wasn't scared to drop him at Old Trafford last year, was he? So you don't know.
We'll see. We've still got plenty of time ahead of the Wakefield game. Pato 562 us on Instagram. He asked, did you get a selfie with Mickey Mouse with your Rover shirt on? I was in Disney World. I didn't get a selfie with Mickey Mouse, but my lad did with his Rovers top on. So I'll share that. And here's one for you, a bit of homework for people to go do. Probably more for people of a certain age. I was lucky enough to meet 𝗫𝗄𝗄𝗏 whilst out in Florida. Now, if you don't know who that is, go Google it, because I didn't know until my lad told me who he was. Yeah, that was an interesting encounter. Over on Facebook, Matt Brady says, is there an update on Tom Amon? Of course, he's injured and will not play again this season for Castleford. And Matt Brady says, also, I've heard Hull KR won't get the League Leader Shield presented to them on Sunday if they win the league. I doubt they will. Obviously, we've still, we're all talking about ifs, buts, and maybes because nothing's sealed. As you said, Baz, the next game's the most important. Looking ahead, though, we've got a final home game against Warrington, if anything was to happen. And if we do, hopefully win the League Leader Shield, you'd probably expect it to be done there in terms of giving people time to plan and stuff. Like Michael Matthews says, and we've already spoke about, for me, Sunday's derby doesn't seem to have the excitement as in recent years. Obviously, I want to win to almost guarantee the League Leaders Shield. Is that because we have more crucial games to win against our top 4 rivals and that lot out there, the threat they wear? I think we pretty much said that, didn't we?
Yeah, bob on.
Let's have a look. We've got Richard Fuelis. He says, is it time to compare the double winners of now and the 1980s and who would get in? Some hard decisions, I think. I think that's probably a conversation for the end of the season, isn't it, Bazza? Because until everything's signed, sealed, delivered and it happens, there isn't a conversation to be had almost. But that time... And
it's always difficult as well, trying to mix 2 teams together, one from the 80s, one from 25, because the game's totally different. It's played totally different as to what it was back there. So I think that would be a very difficult one to pick. Thankfully, I won't be doing it.
Mate, I'll maybe do a special Robin pod for that one to see. But let's hope we get that opportunity because of silverware and because this side is just doing so well. Sean Michael, he talked about great to have the question, Sean. Civic reception at the end of the season, or should the club generate some income? DJ vendors, DJ vendors and huge celebration at the ground to recognise this season's achievements. I mean, of course, don't forget, the Robins hold their Player of the Year awards, end of season awards, in a 3,000-seater arena. You know, I bet there's not any club in World Rugby League who does an event on that scale. So it just shows you the connection between the club, the players, the staff, and the supporters, that we're able to attend such an event. And there's no doubt, as we've seen, Bazza, this club, you know, the people behind the scenes are so innovative, and they've shown that they can pull off big events. You only have to look at the Coldplay tonight's concert there to see what this club can help deliver and achieve. And we've seen so many times already, haven't we? Great events, you know. And that's what's exciting about this club as well, Bazza. It's not just what happens on the field, it's what's happening off it.
Yeah, we don't stand still, do we? We're moving forward. We're always trying to reimagine a new way to make it some sort of revenue, but not only that, put our club on the map and put the city of Hull on the map as well by trying to get these gigs and whatnot. So yeah, we did get ridiculed a bit from our nearest and dearest for having Coldplay there, but nah, it is fantastic that a little club like us, little old Hull KR, can attract one of the biggest bands in the world, and I don't think it'll stop there, because I think we'll go after more gigs to bring and host at our place, and it's a success. And I was optimistic and that the pitch should be right, but I just needs to pay tribute to our groundsman, because the state of the pitch when the board was lifted, of how yellow it was, and yeah, it wasn't perfect against St Helens, but it was at a very, very good standard. There was a few holes being dug, but overall the pitch was absolutely spot on for me after that concert. So we've proved we can do it. We can do it during the season, and it's a great form of revenue for us, and I don't think it'll stop there. We'll be trying to do other things.
Yeah, fair play to the grounds people, because they do an amazing job, and that pitch at Craven Park always looks like a lush green service. So it's great for the Robins to be able to play rugby league on such a great pitch. So fair play to them. Julie Rodman, last question. She says, if we win, and I hope we do convincingly on Sunday, where is everyone celebrating afterwards? Or is it a big party in Craven Street after the Warrington game? Well, Julie, if we win, I'll be in Craven Street. So if you want to nip over, get me a pint of Carlin, I'll be more than happy to receive that.
Oh, Kingston Rovers fight as one for every goal and try. Since '85, we've stood our ground, though trophies passed us by. From Craven Park to Wembley Way, with each toe grip we fight. Now we rise, our heads held high, proudly wearing the red and white.
The Robin Pod is powered by Budget Tyres Auto Centre. Make them your first and only choice for a vast array of vehicle services. They are a reputable East Hull-based car specialist and dedicated to providing quality services at reasonable prices. And don't forget, they are trusted by the players, club officials and supporters of Hull Kingston Rovers. Find them at 146 Leeds Road and ask them about the exclusive discount they offer Hull KR Rovers Forever members.